Hi, gang. I'm Marion, and welcome back to day 24 of the Costco Wine Adventure Advent Calendar. Today, we are heading back to France. Today, we will be trying the brilliant Brut. Remember, if you're drinking along, scan the QR code, and I'll drop the link into the description for you. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the difference between champagne and sparkling wine first. Champagne is sparkling wine, but not all sparkling wine is champagne. Now, if you want to look at the bottle, you'll see that champagne from Champagne, France, which is the only place that can claim to be real champagne, will have a capital C on the label. Other champagnes that you see are going to have a lowercase c. Now, I have seen some bottles that don't follow that, so it's important to read a label to know what you are buying. All right, now sparkling wines were first introduced around the 1500s, and they were actually an accidental invention. What happened was in the cooler regions of the old world winemaking countries, winemakers would be making wine in cooler temperatures, and then in the summertime it would get hot, and that would cause an unintentional secondary fermentation. With this secondary fermentation, you'd get lots of bubblies. Today, winemakers intentionally do a second fermentation to get those bubblies. Now, there's 6 major types of sparkling wine, or different methods to making sparkling wine, but today I'm only going to talk about 2 of them, which are the most common. The first one is the traditional method. You'll see that with cava, champagne, and other types. I'll drop a link into the description for you also for further research. Now, the traditional method is the most commonly used champagne or sparkling wine method. It uses a base wine, a still wine, and the grapes are harvested, fermented into that still wine. And then the next step is called a tirage. Now, that's when yeast and sugar are added to purposely start the second fermentation. And then bottles are capped with a crown, like a little soda cap. But I also wanted to show you this bottle of Martinelli's apple juice. You can see that there's one of those caps on top of there. So that's exactly what they do to normal bottles of champagne. They cap it like that, and then they let it sit. So the second fermentation happens inside of the bottle, and it adds about 1% more alcohol during that process because the yeast is eating the sugar and expelling alcohol. This also creates CO2 as another byproduct. Now, once all the yeast has consumed the sugar, it dies and it floats to the top. Now, it needs to sit here and age for at least a minimum of 15 months. It can go as far as 36 months depending on what type of champagne or sparkling wine it is. Then you have something called riddling. The bottles are actually tipped upside down, typically like this. You'll see them in kind of a holder, and the winemaker will spin them every now and then. The sediment they call it the lees. And what they want is they want the lees to come all the way to the top and float all the way to the top. So that's going to be your dead yeast cells that will float all the way to the top. And then they do something called disgorging. Now, disgorging is where the sediment is removed from the bottle. And what they do is they actually take the bottle, put it into freezing cold liquid. It solidifies the yeast in the top. And then they remove this cap and it flies out. Then what they do is something called dosage. So they add more wine and sugar into the bottle, depending on what type of champagne it is. They add a certain percentage, and then they cork it. They wire it, which you guys have all seen these. So they put the wire on top, and then they label it. Now, the next method we're talking about is the tank method. And you will typically see these with Proseccos or Lambruscos. And the difference with this one is from triage, what they do is they take the cuvee or they still wine, put it in a tank, And then they don't use the bottle for fermentation. They use the tank for fermentation. Then the wine is filtered and then dosed. Remember, dosed is that last stage where they add more wine, more sugar to the bottle, cork it, label it, and wire it shut. But there's no aging involved whatsoever. So you typically would get more of like a very crisp and clean fruity notes in the tank method. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's talk about Brilliant. Now, Brilliant is a brut. You can see it on the bottom of the label. In French, brut means dry. It's a dry style wine. What that also means, there's a whole array of different types of sparkling wine and champagnes. You'll see like extra brut, extra dry, dulce, all sorts of different spectrums. This one's brut. That means that there's at least 2 grams or more of sugar. Okay, so I will also drop another link into the description that shows the difference. Wine Folly, I think, did a great job showing the difference, so I'd like to share that with you as well. Let's go ahead and pop this bubbly. Hopefully it won't explode everywhere. There we go. Beautiful cork coming out of there. Okay. Bubbly, bubbly, bubbly. Now, on the wine distributor's website, they say that this is made in the traditional method. So my guess is that they're fermenting in the bottle, but it's hard to say because they don't just come out and say it. So, you can see the beautiful color. Let's take a whiff. Whew. Lots of CO2 coming out there on the nose. So, fresh fruit and citrus notes. The distributor's website says bread dough. I'm not really getting a whole lot of that, but a lot of those fresh, crisp fruit notes. All right, let's give it a taste. Wow, very, very different than the smell. Okay, so definitely on the drier side. It's not bone dry, but a little more dry. It does have some acidity to it because you do get that mouth-watering expression coming out from underneath the tongue. Some white peach, so a little bit of elderberry and wildflower. Kind of like a toasted nut finish on there. Maybe a little pineapple, some tropical fruits. Now, this is going to be your big cheese wine. Sparkling wine and champagne go great with brie, blue cheese, really any of your cheese plates. Because of the acidity and the sweetness, they pair perfectly. Now, also because of the body and the acidity in these wines, you can pair these with whatever you want. You can have them with salami. You can have them with chicken. You can have them with pork. These would even stand up to like a sirloin steak. I wouldn't do it with a stew. I think that might be a little bit too much. But through a lot of my research, I'm finding that, you know, wine educators are saying, yes, eat your meat with these. You can really pair these versatile wines with anything. Overall, gang, this 24 days has been amazing with you. This has been a fantastic finish, wonderful finish. I thank you so much for sticking with me for these past 24 days. And I cannot wait to do some more wine reviews with you. So please subscribe to my channel. Make sure you click the bell so you get notified when I post something. But you'll be seeing more content very, very soon. So everybody, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, Happy New Year, and cheers.